Welcome back. We are moving forward with part 1 of the USALI. We will focus on a section called the operating schedules. This section is a guide that helps understand the USALI financial reporting details. The authors of the book have put together a total of 14 schedules, each serving a different purpose. Some of these schedules take a comprehensive approach, with layers of categories and subcategories for both revenues and expenses, while others keep things simple, focusing on just a few accounts. In this upcoming video, we will zero in on two specific schedules, the rooms schedule and the food and beverage schedule. These schedules show how financial transactions are recorded for both these two operating departments and provide a window into how financial transactions are recorded in all the USALI schedules. Before proceeding, it's important to note that the USALI is a fundamental reporting standard. However, if your property aims to delve deeper and create additional support schedules to capture more detailed insights for any department, the good news is that you can. A later video in this introductory course will cover ratios and metrics. Here a range of recommended operating metrics holding significant value for information provided in these 14 schedules will be discussed. So, if you're eager to uncover the numbers that can truly help you gauge your performance, make sure not to miss out on the upcoming content. So, get ready to explore the fascinating world of USALI schedules with us. Let's get started on our journey with the rooms schedule. This one has two big sections, revenues and expenses. The interesting thing here is how the USALI breaks down room revenue into some key categories: transient, group, contract, and other. On the flip side, expenses are split into labor costs and related expenses, as well as other expenses. Now, let's talk about the heart of a lodging property's income, renting out rooms and suites to our wonderful guests. That's where these revenue categories come in. Say hello to transient rooms revenue, our first major player. Now, what's a transient guest, you ask? They're the folks who check in for a night or two, not planning to stick around permanently. But wait, there's more. The transient segment isn't just one big category, it's like a puzzle with different pieces. Subcategories include retail, discount, negotiated, qualified, and wholesale. Why the extra complexity, you ask? Well, it's all about giving management a clearer picture of their business. This breakdown helps them see the sources of their revenue with a magnifying glass. Let's move on to the next revenue category: group rooms revenue. Just like with transient, group rooms revenue has its own subdivisions: corporate, association and convention, government, tour and wholesalers, and SMERF. Remember, SMERF stands for social, military, educational, religious, and fraternal groups. While transient guests usually handle their own bookings or use travel agents, group guests are part of organized gatherings. They are usually at the hotel for meetings or events related to their specific group. Their bookings fall under the room block reserved for their group. The next categories are contract rooms and other room revenue. Other rooms revenue covers miscellaneous guest room related income like no-show charges, day-use rooms, early departure fees, and late checkout fees. But there's more to the story. While room revenue might seem neatly categorized, there are considerations that impact how these revenues are assigned to the rooms department. Lucky for us, the USALI doesn't just offer guidance but also practical examples of revenue calculations. The book covers various factors, including package revenues, barter transactions, sales and excise taxes, transient occupancy taxes, loyalty programs, wholesaler revenues, and OTA, online travel agency, revenues. Making things even more interesting, some hotels fall into the mixed ownership lodging category. These lodging operations may have owners who want their units rented when they're not using them. All these details and more are intricately discussed within the room schedule section of the USALI book. Let's shift gears now and dive into the world of expenses. Like in many departments, expenses in the rooms department are split into two main categories per the USALI: labor costs and related expenses and other expenses. So, let's begin by delving into labor costs and related expenses. The first section of labor costs and related expenses is consistent across all schedules. However, different schedules might have a few specific non-management areas unique to each department. This helps hotels understand their labor costs in particular areas within a department. In the room schedule, key common expenses related to labor are the front office, guest services, housekeeping, laundry, and any area that plays a role in the rooms department's operations. Now, on to the second part of labor costs, payroll-related expenses. Here you will see 3 items that are standard across all departments: payroll taxes, supplemental pay, and employee benefits. When you add these up, you get the grand total known as total payroll-related expenses. It's like piecing together a puzzle to see how much is going into making things run smoothly behind the scenes. Following the payroll section is other expenses. This part varies depending on the schedule. Some might feature a concise list, while others will be quite extensive. Given that the rooms department is the heartbeat of a hotel, you can expect the list of other expenses to be quite comprehensive, as you can see here. This list highlights all the expenses that the USALI considers significant for the rooms department. Here's the golden rule related to other expenses: you're allowed to remove irrelevant line items from this list, but adding or swapping in other expense line items is not allowed. Why is this important? Because sticking to the standard lineup allows for meaningful comparisons and benchmarking. You can track your hotel's performance over time or compare it to your budgeted amounts. And, if hotels worldwide follow the same reporting structure, you can even compare your hotel to others around the globe. Even though you can't introduce or replace other expense line items, you're welcome to create a sub-account or sub-schedule to provide more detailed info about a specific expense. This sub-account or sub-schedule then gets folded into one of the appropriate line items listed below. And here's a helpful hint: the USALI has a revenue and expense guide you can consult to determine where certain items should be classified. Referring to the USALI book for questions is key. While each schedule boasts its own set of unique accounts, considering the scope of this introductory course, we will not delve into each one. But we can take a peek at a prime example of a distinctive expense item in the rooms department. Reservations, for example, can be a big expense item in the rooms department as it includes all the costs associated with participating in an internal or external central reservation system. Let's now look at Schedule 2, focusing on the food and beverage department. The food and beverage department is vital, especially in upscale, full-service, or convention hotels. These are the places where guests expect to have access to a range of dining options, including restaurants and room service. This is why you'll find a variety of revenue accounts in this section. Within the food and beverage department, there are 5 main categories of food revenue: venue food revenue, in-room dining food revenue, banquet/conference/catering food revenue, minibar food revenue, and other food revenue. When you add these all up, you get what's known as the total food revenue. First up, we have venue food revenue. This covers the sale of food and non-alcoholic beverages from specific dining areas within the property. Think of places like coffee shops, spa restaurants, halfway houses on the golf course, lobby bar, main dining room, restaurants, and even banquet rooms. And don't forget, any revenue from takeout services associated with these venues should also be included in the respective venue's revenue. Next, there's in-room dining food revenue. This category includes sales of food and non-alcoholic beverages that require delivery right to the guests' rooms. But here's a twist: these revenues can also come from other areas of the hotel where delivery is needed. This might include situations like condominiums located near the hotel or even a hotel with a pool area without a dedicated food service venue. Banquet/conference/catering food revenue is next. This category involves the sale of food and non-alcoholic beverages in a property's banquet/catering space, as well as for group functions held outside the property. The term banquet is typically used for sales linked to guests staying in guest rooms. On the other hand, catering is used for sales related to groups of guests who aren't staying in guest rooms. Moving right along, we come to minibar food revenue. This category covers the sales of packaged food and non-alcoholic beverages that are thoughtfully placed in guest rooms. Think of goodies like candy, snacks, bottled water, and soft drinks. Finally, we have other food revenue. This catch-all category includes the sales of consumable food and non-alcoholic beverage items that don't fit into any of the previous 4 categories. Now, let's switch gears and talk about beverage revenue. You'll notice the same categories as in food revenue here. Each revenue category mirrors those in food, but it's all about the sale of alcoholic beverages for guests to enjoy in these designated areas. The next section of revenue in this schedule is aptly named Other Revenue. This category covers the sale of items that are not consumable food and beverages. Take audiovisual, for example. This might include revenues from providing audiovisual equipment and services, even internet access, for guests at banquet/conference/catering functions. Whether the equipment is owned by the property or rented from a third party, the revenue for audiovisual is recorded here. Keep in mind that the cost of renting this equipment will be included in the cost of sales. Speaking of other revenue, let's talk about function room rentals and setup charges. While most properties have designated function spaces, if a guest room or suite is used as a function room and banquet/conference/catering food and beverage revenue is involved, the revenue from renting that room is noted in this line item. So, there you have it, a comprehensive look into the revenue categories within the food and beverage department. We're uncovering the financial puzzle one piece at a time. Now, let's shift our focus to the cost and expense side of things, starting with the cost of sales section. First is the cost of food and beverage sales, followed by the cost of other revenue. As the name suggests, the cost of food sales covers the expenses incurred for the food served to guests across all segments of food revenues. And remember, this includes not only the food items but also the cost of any beverage items that are transferred from the beverage department and used in food preparation. Moving right along, we have the cost of beverage sales. This accounts for the expenses related to the alcoholic beverages served to guests across all segments of beverage revenue. Within this cost, you'll find the expenses for food items like non-alcoholic beverages that are transferred from the food department and used in the creation of alcoholic beverages. This category also covers any spoilage, waste, and spillage. And now, let's talk about the cost of other revenue. This line item includes the expenses linked to the sales of services and products that aren't consumable food and beverage. Within this category, we have 2 subcategories: audiovisual costs and miscellaneous costs. Here's where it all comes together. The total cost of food and beverage sales gets combined with the total cost of sales and other revenue to give us the total cost of sales and other revenue. From here, we calculate the gross profit. This is done by subtracting the total cost of sales and other revenue from the total revenue of the food and beverage department. So, by carefully examining these cost and expense components, we're able to get a clear picture of the financial landscape within the food and beverage department. Now, let's dive into the expenses section. Just like in the room schedule, this section is divided into 2 main categories: labor costs and related expenses and other expenses. Also, just like in rooms, the salaries and wages in the food and beverage department are further broken down into management and non-management roles. Included in salaries and wages are the wages for temporary employees. When these expenses flow through the property's payroll system, any service charge distribution, like a mandatory gratuity for larger groups, should be paid to hotel employees through the same system. And don't forget, payroll-related expenses, which include payroll taxes, supplemental pay, and employee benefits, all find their home in this section. Now, let's explore other expenses. While most of the items listed here are self-explanatory, remember we mentioned that the USALI comes with a handy revenue and expense guide that you can refer to for specific classification details. Be sure to check out the USALI book for all the fine print. Speaking of unique items, let's highlight a few examples within the food and beverage department. We've got things like flatware, glassware, ice, kitchen fuel, and kitchen small wares, all specific to the food and beverage department. And guess what? Restaurants take reservations, right? The expense line for reservations in this department might cover fees or transaction costs, like commissions, along with the cost of using communication channels and mobile apps or websites for third-party reservation booking systems dedicated to a particular venue. A classic example of this is a system like OpenTable. You're almost there, you've absorbed all this knowledge, and now you're ready to step into the next video. There, you'll get a speedy rundown of all the other operating schedules the USALI offers. Get ready for more insights and discoveries.